This video, as best it can, will serve to preserve and to tell part of our family story. For me, this is where my heritage, as best I can track it, all began. Ed White, West Virginia. In the early 1900s, Ed White, nestled in the foothills of southern West Virginia, was a bustling coal mining town, attracting ambitious miners from all over America. While I can't be sure how Ed White came to be named, what I do know is back in those days, mining towns were generally named after the mine owner. During the first 3 decades of the 20th century, coal mining was a steady source of employment for blacks. What may have attracted our family to the minefields of West Virginia at that time was probably the same lure that attracted a large number of Southern blacks. That lure was the offer proposed by smooth-talking labor agents who were dispatched by coal mining companies to the Southern states. Their offers of free transportation, steady work at high wages, and housing at little or no rent was quite an offer for a man with a family and no work. Lizzie Miller, born in 1863, and her husband, Jay Patton, were the first known descendants of our family to settle in Ed White. The year was 1900. Jay Patton, of course, worked as a miner. Lizzie and Jay had 8 girls and 5 boys. Only a few names of those offspring can be recalled: Flora, Anne, Maggie, Herbert, Huey, Jessie, and of course Bertha. Bertha, born somewhere in the middle of that pack, was married in 1917 at the tender age of 15. Her husband Lindsay was a miner and a resident of Ed White. Bertha and Lindsay had 3 children: Lillian, born in 1918, Vivian, born in 1920, and Lenopolis, born in 1921.
Grandma was the cook. She was the housekeeper.
Grandma, as you know, she ran the house.
She grumbled about everything and persisted to keep going.
She was the boss. She was in charge, always in charge.
Always have the meals on the table. She'd be cursing you out about something.
She was known for raising a lot of hell, as everybody said, but I was Grandma's pet.
Grandma was the best thing that happened to me. She made me realize what being a woman was about, what being a mother was about.
Without her, we would have fallen apart because she was an extension to my mother.
In 1935, Lillian married John Ellis, a miner. In 1947, Vivian married Ulysses Price, also a miner. In 1940, Lenopolis married Sister Morton, and in 1952, Lenopolis forms another union with Virginia. Coal operators, in order to get and keep a reliable labor source, frequently built housing communities near the mines. The homes were often built to house 2 families.
We had a good life in West Virginia. It's like surprising when you talk about coal mining towns and what have you, but that was a prosperous community of black folk working in the coal mines, but at the same time was able to provide a good living for their family.
I remember it as a place where all of my cousins were, and I enjoyed them and they enjoyed me. At the time, I was the only girl cousin. I had 8 boy cousins.
Since the mines were often in remote areas, it was necessary to provide other services to the community, so churches, schools, and stores were built. These self-sufficient communities came to be known as coal camps. In Ed White, the coal camp was divided into 2 sections, the colored camp and the white camp. However, underground, because in an instant your life could be in the hands of your fellow miner, color was not a barrier.
You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
It is difficult to find anything that evokes a picture of the coal towns in the 1920s and the 1930s more than the company store. The company store was not just a local grocery store. It was often the center of life in a coal mining town. Every mining town had one, and everyone shopped there. Everything that a family might want or need could be bought at the company store.
Owned by the company store. As I had gotten older, I realized that they owned us really.
Bertha's oldest daughter, Lillian, and her husband, John Ellis, had 5 children. John, born in 1934, Nathaniel Red, born in 1935, Arthur Whistle, born in 1939, Frank, born in 1941, and Lenopolis Prince, born in 1944. In 1945, Lillian's husband, John Ellis, moved away to Washington, Pennsylvania, taking with him their oldest son, John Dean. In 1947, Lillian remarried. Jesse Bowden, a longtime miner from Ed White, became Lillian's second husband. Together, Lillian and Jesse had 3 children: Norma Jean, born in 1945, Gregory, born in 1948, and Dreama Kay, born in 1950.
Mom was always instrumental in gathering children from all other families to go and do things together to the state park and what have you.
24/7 you saw her, she was smiling, and that was just her nature. And everywhere you went, people talked about her and how pleasant she was, and so much a lady, and just so loving and caring.
She was hit in the eye with a baseball when she was little, and her eye became damaged and started running and everything. Grandma took her to an eye doctor and found out that she needed an eye. Grandma came back from that eye doctor and walked to everybody's house in that coal field for $1 or $2 to buy Grandma Lily her first eye.
Life in a mining camp was not all hard work. Some miners found recreation in baseball. Most mining towns had a baseball team. They created leagues and competed against one another. Of course, the blacks played against blacks and whites against whites. On many occasions, Grandpa Jesse would load up the family vehicle, a Cadillac I believe it was, and head out to challenge a neighboring mining team. This was always a highly anticipated event. The children often sought their recreation in the local swim hole. This Springfield water hole brought quick relief to the summer heat. This swim hole also served as baptismal grounds for many of the black residents of Ed White.
Oh, boogie.
By 1954, the mines of Ed White, like most mines across the nation, transformed to a more mechanized industry. Miners in large numbers were suddenly without work, and the town offered no other options. Faced with the daunting challenge of still having to provide for the family, Jesse headed 6 hours up north to Cleveland, Ohio. Already there was his cousin Stanley, who assisted Jesse in finding work as a driver for a beer distributor company. Moving from small-town living to a booming city like Cleveland wasn't easy for everybody.
It was a culture shock for me to leave a southern part of the country and move into a northern part, which was entirely different type of community.
It was a shock for me to leave all of my relatives back in West Virginia.
I moved to Cleveland with my dad and my stepmom, who was Lily.
We all stayed in one house.
It was a big house at 1426 East 85th Street. At that time, when I moved to that house, I was the 22nd person to, that we all lived in this house.
It was my mother, my father,
Uncle Snooky,
all of the offsprings,
Charlene and Lindsay,
Clarence Miller,
Gaynell, Pumpkin,
Ulysses Price,
Willie Pearl,
Vivian Price.
That was, oh man, that was rough.
We didn't suffer for anything.
Eventually, coal mines closed down, so everyone left.
Today, Ed White, no longer on the map, has a population of about 30 people. While most of what was there during the early years is gone, what will always remain deeply settled in the coal-covered soil of those mines is the blood and the sweat left by the hard-working bodies of our relatives who labored to lay the foundation for our living.